Hey, what's up guys, Gypsy back here today for some more ITL content. The last ITL content I brought to you guys would have been the playoffs, as well as my boy Aki's semi-finals match, so it's been quite a while since I've actually uploaded any of my own ITL content, so I hope you guys are looking forward to some more Draft League. Obviously we got the CPC going, but ITL, you know, it's a pretty fun league and we got a pretty fun team, so yeah, I hope you guys are going to enjoy more ITL content coming to you. So I'm probably going to upload a few ITL games in each video. So it is a 13-week season, and this is actually week 3. So I've still got quite a few videos to go. So I'm probably going to be combining them into one video at a time, and just releasing like 3 or 4 ITL weeks in succession. But yeah, I hope you guys are pumped for that. And needless to say, we're going to kick it off with week 3, going up against a good friend of mine, Nick, aka Reckless Bat. Definitely a very solid player, a guy who throughout the whole season was threatening to make playoffs in our division, definitely. So yeah, he's got a really spooky team. He also had Mega Gallade on his team, so one of the best megas in the format without a doubt, plus stuff like Zygarde. He's got the Flinch Core in Rachi Togekiss, which is just very nice synergetically. Solid Water and Toad, nice T-Spikes, Galvantula, which on electric type versus my team is a pretty big threat. Needless to say, he had a lot of threats to prep for, and we're going to jump into the team quickly that I brought for this game. So first up, we have a pretty fast Aero actually this week, with enough speed to outspeed any potential Scarf base 80s, so stuff like Togekiss. He also had another base 80 on his team, I believe, which is one of the reasons why I did opt to run a faster Aero here. Yeah, basically giving myself some safeguard versus like a Scarf Togekiss could be really solid, because Scarfed Air Slash is just a bit annoying to play against. And this mon is pretty nice to check Gallade with Aerial Ace, as well as EQ. I think it's like Roost, EQ, Aerial Ace, and Stone Edge. Pretty solid coverage versus his team. The next one we have is a defensive Mew, which along with a defensive Slowbro can help to check stuff like Gallade and particularly the Zygarde, which is a pretty big threat to my team. It also is a pretty solid answer, just wisping all of his team. Nothing wants to switch in and take a burn. Obviously Black Sludge, Tenta, and like Lefty's Toad can take the burns, but it does then you know, take away their ability to recover, so that's pretty important. Getting Burn Chip on Togekiss would be nice too if this is a bulky Togekiss, although I do have Celesteela and Aero, which handle it pretty nicely. But then we have a Scarf Nidoqueen here, so pretty bulky Nidoqueen spread. Didn't need to go max speed or anything in this game, and that afforded me some bulk, which is going to be pretty nice because Galvantula is a pretty big threat to this team, and having the speed on Queen allows me to outspeed basically his whole team, actually, unboosted of course. I didn't have to run a ton of speed on this either, because his team is pretty slow, like relatively slow, and this is going to allow me to potentially nab a surprise kill, or at least guarantee I set up rocks or T-Spikes once his removal is out of the picture. So it's a pretty nice member in this game. Then we have a Life Orb Gren, pretty solid versus his team. I've got Grass Knot for the Toad, as well as like Dark Pulse, Ice Beam. I think I was just like 4 attacks Life Orb Gren in this game. Definitely a nice mon here for sure, as well as versus the rest of his team. I think I was creeping. I think he had an Alolan Persian on his squad too, and I was creeping that. But yeah, pretty solid mon here for sure. I mentioned earlier we have a defensive Slowbro with Foul Play for an SD, Mega Gallade, and lastly we have an Autonomize Z-Fly Celesteela, which can definitely put in the work once things are chipped. Once things are burnt, that's a nice kind of synergetic part with Mew. Mew can just spam Willow, and once things are burnt, it's easier for Celesteela to set up an Autonomize. So, like I mentioned earlier, his team isn't the fastest, so I could afford a lot of bulk in my Celly, and not too much speed, because after an auto, I just do naturally outspeed his team bar Scarfers, so that's pretty nice. So we're going to jump into the match. He's going to lead off with Jirachi here. I'm going to lead off with Gren. Now, versus a team like Nick's and versus a player like Nick is kind of aggressive, like as far as the way he plays, the sets he tends to bring. It's important that I scout out his team, get a feel for like how he wants to play this game, get a feel for like what sort of set he's brought. And you're going to see that in the early game here. So I'm going to kind of play kind of passively to get an understanding of how Nick wants to approach this. So he's going to live with Jirachi here. I'm going to live with my Gren. As I mentioned, Gren is pretty nice in this game. I don't want to get parried here by like a Colbarachi or even just a Spidef Rachi with T-Wave. Could be pretty annoying to me, honestly. T-Wave is pretty nice versus my team, being able to T-Wave Mew, Aero, Selly, Gren. Gren is pretty important, to be honest, so I'm going to switch out. It also scouts for a Scarfed T-Bolt, or a Scarfed U-Turn, or a Scarfed Moonblast. He is shiny after all, so all these things to consider. I'm going to switch out here. If you wanted to go for rocks here, I gained valuable information, as I am just going to go into my Mew, as I do have defog on this Mew. So had he gone for rocks there, that probably confirmed that he was like a Colba, or maybe even like a specially defensive Rachi, and having Wisp and defog allowed me to take that on with Mew, and obviously not risk my Grand turn 1. So he's going to go for U-turn here. Reveals to be pretty invested. I believe he ends up being like a mixed attacking Jirachi, either Scarf or E-Belt. I don't remember at this stage, but the fact that he U-turned out on my Rachi implies that he's a Scarfed Rachi, or an offensive Colba there. So he's going to go out into his Galvantula, which is pretty nice for him, because this thing threatens my team like pretty badly. I do have Nidoqueen, which, as I mentioned, does have some bulk, but it's always guessing games, and if this is specs, it's really going to punish my switching. So I'm going to go hard out into Nidoqueen here. Can't afford to play any games with Aero. Obviously I could have gone into that on a Bug Buzz, but he could have just as easily gone for HP Ice, predicting my Nidoqueen to come in here. So he's going to go for a Bug Buzz here. That does 35 to Queen, so yeah, that is specs. That is specs. Specs as fuck. So this turn I am going to go for Earth Power. What Earth Power does is it covers him going, making the aggressive play into Rachi, predicting my Rocks, or even a Sludge Wave, predicting his Togekiss. It also means that if he goes hard into Tenta, I can 2-hit KO that. If I'm like an offensive Queen, which I pretty much am, judging by the damage he got off with Bug Buzz, he may make an aggressive switch into something like Tentacruel or Psychic Rachi, knowing he can, you know, not be downed by Sludge Wave and get up Rocks, or just knock me out with a super effective stab move this turn. So I'm going to go for Earth Power, as he is going to go back out into his Togekiss there, which is interesting. So he goes out to Togekiss, doesn't fear the Sludge Wave, which is a fair play because he does have Rachi in the back. So he also has a Toad, so I was more than likely going to go for an Earth Power there if I was an offensive Queen. So he's going to go into his Togekiss here, and I am just going to go out into my Aerodactyl, as he is going to make the double out into his Jirachi there, scouting for the Sludge Wave. So fair play. Like, if I was choice locked, I would have switched out before his Togekiss anyway, and if I'd stayed in, I would have gone for a Sludge Wave. He could have then gone for a Zen Headbutt or a Psychic. So yeah, I can definitely understand why he made this play into Rachi, but this is all giving me valuable information. I am playing on the back foot early in this game, but it's also good because it's giving me vital information for my Celesteela late game. So he's going to bring in his Rachi here. I am going to make the switch out into my Slowbro as he fires off a T-Bolt. Now this is important. This implies obviously mixed Rachi. So we saw the U-turn damage, we saw U-turn, we saw T-Bolt. So this is important. At this stage I know he's Scarfed, so I am just going to switch out into my, I believe I go out into my Mew here. Mew covered him obviously going for T-Bolt there, as I added up and just fired a free Wisp. It also covered him making the aggressive switch into Zygarde, or even the Seismitoad, predicting my Nidoqueen to come in there. So we get this right. Mew's going to come in here, and now I can just fire off a Will-O-Wisp this turn, as he does go out into his Jirachi. So this is nice. This means that Rachi's U-turn is going to be doing significantly less to stuff like Mew, Gren, and chances are this turn he is just going to U-turn out. So I believe this turn I do double Wisp, as he's going to go out into his Tentacruel. And this is nice. We get chip off on this Tenta, which is putting it closer in range of dying, in conjunction with the helmet damage it's going to take from my Slowbro and the Psyshock. So once this thing is down, I can set up T-Spikes, which really are new to Zygarde if it's like a defensive sub-coil set, and is also pretty nice to just chip down this Galvantula, so, as well as the Seismitoad. I'm just going to fire off an Ice Beam here. Ice Beam, I send an Ice Beam while he Toxics, and although that's not good for my defensive Mew, the fact that it didn't bring Gallade takes a lot of pressure off my Slowbro and pretty much frees it up to act as a defensive response to this Zygarde in the back. So I'm not too worried about taking this Toxic here. Me staying in and getting chip on this Tentacruel is pretty important, because the more I whittle this thing down, as I mentioned earlier, like, the less likely it is to be a switch into Gren, and the less likely it will be to be able to spin consistently on my Rocky Helmet Slowbro. So this turn I am going to switch out. I'm going to go into my Slowbro this turn, as he makes the switch out into his Jirachi. I know he's got T-Bolt, so I'm just going to click Psyshock here, predicting him to go for the U-turn, not wanting to give my Nidoqueen a free switch in. And if he does click T-Bolt, I know I can live one. So he's going to fire for T-Bolt. He does a chunk, but we do have regen, so we can heal that back off, as he is going to, this turn, go out into his Togekiss. So now I'm going to go out into my Nidoqueen here. I don't really know why he made the play into his Togekiss. Perhaps he thought I'd go into Mew. Banking off the fact that, like, I hadn't already figured that this was a Scarfed Jirachi, but Togekiss was all around the safest play there. I figured that was choice locked, and if he went into this Togekiss, his plan was probably going to be to paralyze or just air slash down my Mew, considering it's toxic. So Nidoqueen covered that play as well, as he does make the switch out into his Tentacruel as I get up my rocks. So rocks are really nice. Rocks for whittling down this this Galvantula, and the Togekiss is going to be nice in the long run for stuff like Gren. But he's going to bring in his Tentacruel here, and I know from the moveset he's shown Scald, he's shown Toxic, he's probably got Spin and maybe like Ice Beam or something, or maybe some other like status move. But yeah, this, I know that Slowbro can pretty much heal up on this Tentacruel here, and if he does burn me with Scald, it makes me obviously not able to get Toxic, which is really nice and gives Slowbro a far better time versus his team if he does have Toxic spam on other mons like Zygarde. So he's going to spin off here, spin my rocks away, but take helmet damage plus burn in the process. And this is what I was saying, like, getting the burn off on Tenta is so nice in that regard. He's not lefties or like Black Sludge, so he could be a Resist Berry. That's definitely what he could be. Could be like Psychic or like a Ground Resist Berry, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. But this turn he is going to switch out into his Jirachi, as I do just fire for Psyshock. On the off chance he went into Galvantula there, Psyshock did a ton, and him going out into Rachi is no big deal, as I can obviously live a T-Bolt from this range. I'm going to stay in this turn and I believe slack off, scouting for what he wanted to lock himself into, as he's now going to go out into his Togekiss. So this is nice. I am just going to get a switch out into my Aero here. Like, no man T-Waves there. He's got no reason to T-Wave. Air Slash is his play every time, or Heal Bell if he has it, or Wish. But he does reveal the Air Slash, and it does a decent chunk to my Aero. I'm just going to go for the Stone Edge here. If I had Taunt, I would have taunted here, but I obviously don't. I'm like offensive with Roost, I think. Yeah, offensive with the Roost, as that can still check stuff like the Togekiss. But he's going to reveal a Charty Berry. I do get a crit here, but it's not going to end up mattering, as you'll see. He fires off a T-Wave, so this is a really nice prep. Charty T-Wave on the Togekiss to cripple to like lure and cripple the arrow. So this is pretty nice prep. I was pretty impressed when I saw this. It's not going to really influence the game, but it's definitely nice. It does put my arrow out of commission though, so that means it's not going to be able to revenge like a Specs Galvantula. It wasn't really doing anything to Zygarde anyway, and Rachi was scarfed. But it does mean that Galvantula can just click a move versus this arrow without having to fear it outspeeding it. It also means that his Tentacruel is probably going to outspeed my arrow, so that's important to know. He's now going to roost up with his Togekiss here, as I am just going to get rocks up this turn as he goes back out into his Tentacruel here. And the nice thing about this is, like, the more I bring in Nidoqueen and set up rocks, the more this Tentacruel is forced into spin, the more helmet damage it takes, and eventually it's not going to be able to come in anymore. So that's how I'm kind of approaching this situation, as he's just going to spin this turn. He's going to take damage from the helmet and get knocked out by the Psyshock. So next time I get rocks up with Queen, the hitter stays. So he's going to bring up the monster Specs Galvantula, as I am going to make the read of going into my arrow on the Bug Buzz. So arrow choose that effortlessly, and I will be able to just fire off an EQ here. No real point keeping this around, because I'd much rather get damage off on whatever wants to come in. I get up my rocks and pressure Galvantula with my Auto Celesteela or my Greninja, as he is going to go into his Seismitoad here. We get a crit on the EQ, which actually doesn't matter because it dropped to my Life Orb Gren's Grass Knot after a little bit of chip anyway, but he didn't know I had Grass Knot at this stage, but it's going to be revealed soon. But he's going to go for the Scald here, as I am just going to, I believe, Wisp this Toad to mitigate its lefties, as he is just going to go for the knockoff. So he knocks off my lefties. As I mentioned, Mew isn't like essential in this game anymore, because I do have Slowbro to check the big bag Zygarde in the back. He's going to start scalding me down. Also, he's probably like I think I was definitely creeping. I I was creeping base 80s. I think I was creeping a Zygarde actually with my Mew, so I was creeping like max speed Zygarde. So it was a pretty fast Mew, so Mew can't even be like air slash flinch down by the Togekiss, so that's pretty nice. But he's going to knock off my Gren's Life Orb here, as I will just be able to knock him out with the Grass Knot. He doesn't see it coming, and Toad goes down. So that's really nice. That's really nice for Gren. I can just start spamming Dark and Water moves here, as he's going to go for the Moonblast. He's going to lock himself into Moonblast there. So either he was going to go for T-Bolt or Moonblast that turn, and Queen was a safe switch in that sense. He goes for Moonblast here. Interesting, interesting bring. I'm not quite sure why he brought Moonblast. I may have still had Salamence at this stage in the season. I'm not quite sure. But T-Bolt obviously hit Gren, as well as hitting other members on my team. I think it may have been because I did have Mence at this stage, but he's going to go for Moonblast, and Nidoqueen's going to chew that up. And at this stage, I'm just going to throw up my T-Spikes, because I want to get this monster toxic as soon as possible, or at least poisoned. So I'm going to go into my my Slowbro here as he tries to sub. So the fact that he's sub and lefties, this is why I wanted T-Spikes. Like, this just makes this kind of Zygarde irrelevant, because it's recovering less than it's losing, because of the 12% each turn. And if I can get another T-Spike up, it's just game over basically with this Zygarde. But Slowbro is a pretty hard stop to this Zygarde, so that's pretty nice anyway. But he's going to bring in his Jirachi here, and this thing is going to take some nice chip from the Ice Beam and the Burn, as he's going to knock out my Arrow with the Psyshock there. So I went Arrow there just in case he crit me with T-Bolt. I didn't want to risk my Slowbro there, as it is so important for the Zygarde. So sacking Arrow there was the play, as now I will be able to just bring in Celesteela here. Had he gone for T-Bolt there, obviously I had a free switch into my Nidoqueen the following turn to just fire off a Sludge Wave, as that hit everything and it guaranteed the Zygarde was poisoned if that was going to be a switch in. I think I even had Ice Beam on my, I think I actually had Ice Beam, no I didn't have Ice Beam, I had Sludge Wave and Earth Power, but firing off a Sludge Wave versus a Thunderbolt locked Rachi ensured either a kill on these two, or ensured Zygarde got poisoned on the switch in, which is important. But he's going to bring in his Zygarde here, as I am just going to Autonomize up with my Selly, and I love Selly, man. I've loved using Selly in the MPL, as well as the ITL, as well as the CPC. So I've had this thing in 3 leagues consecutively. It's definitely a fun one to use. It's definitely top 5 in the format in my opinion. But I'm going to fire off the Z-Fly. Zygarde chews because it's busted. It's got crazy defense, and we don't have a Beast Boost up yet. But this turn we will be able to just click Heavy Slam and take him out, getting the attack boost. Now Arachi's going to come in here and actually outspeed me because he has a Scarf set that does 48. Selly is a fiend with HP investment. It just doesn't die. So I think at this stage in the match, Nick thought I was actually like Nick said in the chat, the curse of 1,000 arrows. He thought like my Selly had lost its flying typing, but 47 was super effective damage there. He didn't realize like that's not how the mechanic worked, but we had a laugh about it after the game. But yeah, basically Selly's going to outspeed this Galvantula here because it was confirmed specs earlier in the game. And yeah, basically just wrap this game up with a combination of Fly and Heavy Slams. So that's going to be my week 3 game versus Nick. I did preface this match by saying, by kind of explaining to you guys why I played the early game the way I did. You see, it was a 5-0 win, obviously, but I played the early game in a kind of, in a kind of cautious way. Like I played it sort of defensively in an attempt to gain information on his team. This is important. Like you don't have to play every game super aggressively from the get-go. Like it's good to mix it up, and in certain matchups like these, when your opponent has a really unpredictable team, it's good to get information if you can. Like if you can risk it, if you have bulk on your team like Slowbro and Queen and Mew that can afford you those kind of safe pivots, sometimes it can really be crucial to get that kind of information. But that's gonna be my week 3 game. Hope you guys did enjoy. I'm gonna pause it here and we're gonna jump into week 4. Alright guys, so we're here with week 4, going up against Noivern Nation, aka Davion, the Heat God. This guy gives Aki a run for his money in terms of heat, if I'm honest. But yeah, he's got a pretty interesting team. But yeah, rocking a pretty fun squad this week. You got Defog, 3 attacks, Aero with enough speed for Jolteon. Pretty like Spadef. Nidoqueen with Piper Berry. He did have Mega Guard, which he did actually opt to leave on the bench, which was interesting. He was probably turned off considering I had Selly, Queen, and like Mew on my squad. So then we have literally the same set we brought last game. So like Z-Fly, Auto, Selly with EQ and Heavy Slam. Then a nice mixed F, but predominantly split F. Shaman to check stuff like the Guard and the Jolteon. We also have a physically defensive Slowbro to check the likes of Chomp, and we have a Scarfed Mew, which actually goes ham versus his team once Drapions down. So yeah, pretty fun team for sure. So we're going to jump into it. He's going to lead off with his Kamala, as I'm going to lead off with my Queen. I do have Defog on the arrow, and I am aware that he has a Spinner and probably Spikes on this Klefki. So this turn I am just going to go for EQ. I want to get damage off on this. The lower I can get this, the closer I put it in range to losing to Psychic Scarf Mew late game. And once Klefki and Drapion are out of the way, Psychic Mew just kind of wins. Or Psyshock, I forget which one I was this game. But he's going to U-turn out here into his Garchomp. I'm going to make the switch out into my my Slowbro. Looking at his team, possible Scarfers are like Chomp, Virizion maybe, but realistically he needs like SD, Virizion, SD, Drapion to kind of break through my team, to have any chance of breaking through my team. So this may be a Scarfer, it may also be SD because he uses a Z Chomp, which allows him to get past Slowbro. As well as, but I was expecting like SD Firefang for Selly, honestly, otherwise he's kind of checked by it. But I'm gonna make, he's gonna make the switch out this turn. Gonna go out into his Klefki, as I do just fire for Scald here. Get a nice chip off in this Klefki, as he's now gonna lay up a Spike, I believe, this turn. As I'm just gonna go out into my Queen. He actually goes for Light Screen that turn, but he's gonna go for the Reflect this turn, as I just get EQ damage off on this Klefki. Obviously I had rocks of my own on this Nidoqueen, but getting damage off in this Klefki is more important because I put it closer in range of dying to Mew. And if he's going to start stacking me, I'm going to have to defog with Arrow anyway, so it's not worth wasting a turn getting up my hazards there. But if you see, his whole team is also grounded, so nothing really wants to come in on an EQ, barring a bulky Chomp. If Virizion comes in, it just gets severely weakened by a Poison Jab the following turn. So yeah, this Nidoqueen is a pretty decent threat to his team, even though it is like a bulkier set. So he's going to go for Spikes this turn, as I am just going to consistently click EQ here. And he's getting lefties back, but he's also losing a ton of health. So EQ is going to chip this Garchomp down just a little bit, as this turn I am going to go into my Slowbro, as he does just go for the Swords Dance this turn. I do have Ice Beam on this Slowbro, as he's now going to switch out into Drapion, as I do reveal it. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a chance he could have been Z Outrage, but the fact that I have a Celesteela makes me strongly think that he will be Z Fire, because otherwise he can't really break past it, as I mentioned. And Davion is that kind of builder. Like, I scouted him a bit, I saw he has some kind of build tendencies to run stuff like that to break past opponents, like really solid checks to his mons. So he did, I think he faced off against like a Skarm or something. Similar kind of situation with Selly, and he did definitely bring the Z Firefang. So he's gonna make the switch out into his Drapion here. This was definitely an interesting Drapion set. So I'm gonna go for Scald here, as he does go for Night Slash and crits me, and that's not like a super unlucky crit, because he is like Scope Lens with the sniper ability. So he's like he's a hacksy, nice hacksy crit fucking Drapion set. So nice scummy Drapion set. I'm just gonna protect up here to get a little bit of lefties back. This is obviously one of my best responses to his Chomp, as he's now going to go for Knockoff. And this turn I am just going to make the switch out into my Arrow, knowing I can live a crit Night Slash if he wants to go for it and threaten him with an EQ. But he is just going to go out into his this thing, I don't even remember what it's called, little Blinky Bill Koala looking motherfucker, but I actually don't remember what it's called, fuck. Kamala is his name, but yeah, he's going to go out into that and sack it off to the EQ, as Klefki is going to come in here. I'm going to Roost up this turn, as he does go for a Reflect. I do have Defog on this set. But Arrow is actually really nice to keep around for the rest of his team. It can check a lot of his team, to be honest. Like EQ, as I mentioned, is so free versus his team, and he's hardly going to want to switch Virizion in on an EQ and just have it die to an Aerial Ace. So in case he did have T-Wave and he just didn't think I'd leave my Arrow in there this turn, I am going to make the switch out into my Nidoqueen here. as he does reveal T-Wave. So we get him there on that T-Wave, as now we'll just be able to fire off another EQ, weakening down this clef key, as he does sack it off due to a crit. Definitely unfortunate for him, but the most it would have done is allowed him to get up a light screen the following turn, which is actually pretty nice for me, because now I can just go out into my Mew here. I would have probably defogged with Arrow if he had got up a light screen, because I need Mew to win with Ice Beam. I don't need it to win it, but it's like a pretty nice way to stun on him with Scarfed Ice Beam Heroes. I know this turn, like, he knows I have Selly, he knows I have Slowbro, so he has to SD here. Like, he really has to do any considerable damage to my team. And if he did just go for EQ or Fire Fang here, expecting me to go Selly or Slowbro, Mew ate it up, because I am pretty bulky on this Mew, and knocked him out with Ice Beam. So I am Scarf, so we are going to get the outspeed here. He definitely wasn't expecting that. The first few weeks, I think I've brought like defensive Mew to most of my games, so Scarf Mew really caught him there, as he's now going to bring in his Jolteon this turn. And I'm just going to go into my Shaman here. He's actually going to go for the workup. So this is a workup. He's going to reveal a Flame Orb. Nice workup Flame Orb Jolteon. He's going to crit me here with Signal Beam. It didn't really matter too much, in the sense that like I would have been 2KO'd anyway. But I'm going to crit him back with Earth Power. So yeah, crit for crit. Both didn't really matter in the big scheme of things. Nidoqueen's going to be able to come in this turn, eat up any hit from this Jolteon, and just bop it with an EQ. So yeah, the crit was pretty relevant there, but it's pretty funny that we both crit each other on the same turn, in my opinion. But yeah, he's now going to bring in his Virizion, and he's going to take out my my Nidoqueen there with the Giga Drain. But this is exactly what my Selly wanted, as now I can just go for the Autonomize here. He sets up a Calm Mind, but that's not going to be enough to save him. Selly's just going to come in here, click a Z Fly, and wrap this game up. So yep, two sweeps in a row with Selly. This thing really wreaks some havoc early season in the ITL. So it's going to be week 4 up against Davion. Definitely a quick fun match. Good to see Scarf Mew do some work. Good to see some heat. Some like work up Flame Orb heat from Davion. He's known for it. So yeah, I think this was like one of his last games in the season before he actually ended up leaving, and my boy Carson actually ended up taking his place. That was pretty cool. But it's going to be week 4. Definitely a quicker game than my first one, than the week 3 match. But I'm going to pause it here, and we'll jump into week 5. Alright guys, here with week 5, going up against my good friend Aki and the commissioner of the league, and without a doubt, the best player I have to play this season in the ITL, so it's very exciting. I always enjoy going up against my boy Aki, and I'm a firm believer in Aki's skill. I think he's criminally underrated in the format. He's definitely one of the best players in my opinion, and he's a very good friend of mine, so you already know it's going to be a fun game. He's got a very fat team. He's got the nice Mega Venusaur Tapu Fini team. He's got Aloe in the back. Obviously he's brought like Mamoswine, Hydra, and a Selgor to this game, which are all pretty big offensive threats, as well as the Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat may not seem like the biggest offensive threat on paper, but versus my team in particular, it's very threatening, as the fire, like dual typing, allows it to get past stuff like Shaman, which is a pretty solid defensive switch into electric types. So yeah, very big threat to my team. That's probably going to be a Scarfer, either that or Hydreigon to comfortably revenge Arrow, but we're going to have to see once we get into the game. Looking at his team at matchup, he's probably going to have Spikes and a Selgor. No real reason to bring it otherwise. It doesn't really do a ton to me unless it's a Spikes lead. It could be potentially a final Gambit lead, which is something I heavily considered, and that's going to play into my lead matchup. But yeah, Spikes or Selgor is what I was expecting in that slot. As I mentioned, probably Scarf Rotom here. Specs maybe, but I think Scarf is safer in the first game to give yourself a solid, reliable switch into, or like Revenger I should say, to stuff like Mega Arrow and like a Modest or Adamant Auto Selly, which Auto Selly you've seen like the past 2 games, it's literally just swept the opponent, so he's obviously going to want to prepare for that. Probably like a really nice specially defensive Mew I'd say, or like a mixed defensive Mew to be able to check stuff like Gran and Shaman. Nidoqueen too, which is a pretty big threat to his team. Life Orb Mamo, massive monster to prep for, big threat to my team. Some sort of like bulky offensive Hydra, definitely pretty nice against me, although I do have an Aromatisse which hard walls this thing unless it runs Z steel coverage. So yeah, we're gonna have to see, does Aki respect the Aromatisse chilling in the back, or does he not? That's gonna be interesting. But the last one we have here is the Fini, which could be like some sort of defensive set. Could be offensive. I wasn't really thinking offensive, but some sort of defensive set to take advantage of stuff like Mew, like a defensive Mew with Will-O-Wisp could be pretty nice. But that's going to be my kind of thoughts on his team pre-game. But running over the team that I have, I got a pretty nice Defog, Roost, Aquatail, and Stone Edge Aero. Aero just demolishes his team. Stone Edge, once it's weakened. Aquatail, Stone Edge. Really solid. Covered a lot of his team. Obviously he has stuff like Alomomola, which can just chew and roost up, but I have stuff that can take advantage of Alomomola, of course. Then we have a defensive Taunt Super Fang Will-O-Wisp Mew, so very nice versus this team with enough speed to taunt a Carmine Finny and just prevent it from setting up all over my face. I can just taunt it, proceed to Super Fang it down, stall that Misty Terrain, and then fire for Will-O-Wisp, which will cripple it. Very nice for Mamo because I can switch in on EQs because I am defensive but speedy. Fire for Will-O-Wisp if Terrain is not. Pretty much threatened out by Hydra, which is unfortunate, but I had to bring this kind of defensive Mew this game because he had a ton of physically offensive threats like Mamoswine on his team that demanded that kind of respect. So then we have a pretty offensive but bulky Shaman. 3 attacks, Synthesis here, Dazzling Gleam, Psychic. Seed Flare has decent coverage versus his team. It's not doing too much. Divino, unfortunately, because that thing is obnoxiously fat, but it's a nice revenge into stuff like a weakened Hydra with Dazzling Gleam, stuff like Mamoswine and Finny. Then we have a nice Heat Rest Talk, Coil Return Electros, which if you look at his team does so much work. Like I get a Coil up, and what's stopping me? Bar Taunt. Nothing. Like Bar Taunt and Trick, this thing can just go in. So pretty nice heat set this game. Then we have a defensive Selly here, pretty much like a secondary response to Mamo. Mamo is a massive threat to my team. Look at my Icicle Crash switch-ins, they don't exist. So Selly, pretty obligatory bring here. Could have brought Slowbro, of course, but he's got so much to threaten that with like Rotom and Venu, and Hydra alone will threaten that, plus Finny can trap it with Whirlpool, and a Selgor threatens it out as well. So last one we have is a pretty Spadef Nidoqueen here to set up Rocks. Rocks is going to be pretty important in this game if I can get them up. He does also check a Scarf Rotom pretty nicely with a Black Sludge. So going to jump into it. He's going to lead off with his Tapu Fini, as I do lead off with my Selly. I lead off with my Selly in case he wanted to lead off with his Mamo. I could get a Heavy Slam off. It also covered him leading potentially with Excelgor. If he was a Scarf Rotom, I scout for Trick or Volt Switch and then go into my Nidoqueen and set up Rocks if he does opt to Volt or Trick that turn, as he would more than likely Volt that first turn. And if I had shown Protect, Aki can get pretty aggressive. His plays versus me, so he may just stay in expecting him to make the safe play there. Either way, he opts to lead off with his Finny here, not wanting me to lead off with my Nidoqueen, I suppose. But Nidoqueen obviously matches up pretty nicely versus Finny too, so I'm not quite sure what he expected there. I think it was to check a potential lead arrow as well, because he actually ends up being offensive with Hydro Pump, which would have easily 2KO'd my arrow. So he's gonna lead off with his Finny here. I believe this turn going to switch out into my Shaman, just wanting to scout for a potential Taunt or Nature's Madness on the Finny. I do have Synthesis there, and I do outspeed, so I can always heal up on the Finny, and it's no big deal. He does bring in the Rotom here, and that's going to afford me a switch into my Nidoqueen this turn, as he does fire off the Scarfed Overheat. So that's good to know. Confirms my suspicions that this is probably a Scarf set. That's definitely not Specs damage, but Scarfed Overheat is good to know, because now my arrow is threatened by this Rotom immediately because of that information. So that's good to know. But now I am just going to get up my Rocks this turn, I believe, as he does make the switch out into his Mamoswine here. And this turn I'm going to switch out into my Mew, as I know that I can take a knockoff even from a Life Orb Mamoswine, as he does reveal to be a Life Orb. He reveals to actually be a Jolly Mamoswine, which is pretty cool, because that means that it allows him to outspeed a timid Nidoqueen, which is nice. It also means that he can potentially catch like a slower Mew creeping adamant Mamoswine off guard by running Jolly. So definitely some nice prep on Aki's part, but because we are creeping Finny with this Mew set, we naturally creep or outspeed a Jolly Mamo here. So I will just be able to roost up before he can click EQ and take me out there. So this turn I think he is actually going to switch out and going to go into his Selgor, as I do roost up. I need to preserve health on this Mew, it's important. The fact that he knocked off my lefties is kind of annoying, because now Mew won't be getting that passive recovery, but it's a trade I'm willing to make. I get information off on this Mammoth Swine, and I'm also at a high amount of health now, which is important. So he's going to go into his Selgor this turn. I do just go out into my Arrow here, as I know I can defog if he wants to repetitively set up spikes versus my Arrow, but I do outspeed him here, and I will be able to just go for the Stone Edge, as he does actually protect to scout or just burn PP on my Stone Edge. As he fires off a Water Shuriken, gets 3 hits, and I'm just going to bop him here with the Stone Edge. So that's one that's one threat down. He does have spikes up on my side of the field, but considering that Mew, Shaman, and Nidoqueen are the only ones really affected by it, I'm willing to keep them up, because it does mean that I keep my own rocks up on his side, which is really, really nice for whittling down his team. Everything taking 12 is pretty key for my my Electros winning with Coil, as well as Arrow winning late game. So he's going to bring in his Hydra here and scare me out with a potential Scarf to bring, as I will just be able to go out into my Electros. If you wanted to go for a Draco there or a Flash Cannon, I easily chewed that. I could rest off a Draco because I am like really spit F. But he's going to reveal Dragon Tail, which is interesting. So this is a nice phasing Hydra in conjunction with Hazards. It's a really cool set versus me, but he phases me out into my Shaman here, and I'm just going to play it safe and fire off a Dazzling Gleam. I could have, right there, I could have made a double out into my Mew, predicting his Venusaur or his Rotom to come in, but honestly it wasn't worth it. If he just clicked Dark Pulse, my Mew would have been really low, or taken out if he was like modest Dread Plate, so it wasn't a risk I was willing to take at that stage. When you're in this kind of position versus Aki, and with this kind of matchup, you have to play carefully. Also, I'm in a pretty solid position at this stage, and I have no reason to play so aggressively, so I'm just going to fire for Dazzling Gleam, as it does a nice 8, nice 8 to Venu. It's not even Mega Evolved and it took 8, so yeah, Venu is obnoxious, but he's going to go for Sleep Powder this turn, as I send in my Electros. This is nice because I am Sleep Talk, and I did expect some kind of Leech knockoff or Sleep Powder that turn, and he does attempt to catch me out of the Sleep Powder, but that's going to play out to Electros' advantage, because having Sleep Talk, I can kind of catch him here. He goes for Leech, so he's got Sleep Powder, Leech Seed, and more than likely Synthesis on this set, and he must have Sludge Bomb as a wave, reliably hitting Mew, Shaman, stuff like that. So that's interesting coverage. It means he's pretty much walled by like Celesteela if I'm faster, if I can get a sub up or something. And if I'm Taunt Arrow, then I just wall him. So that's definitely interesting, but it's definitely an effective set versus a lot of my team. So he's going to get the Leech up here, as I am just going to start Sleep Talking. This turn he's now going to switch out into his Hydreigon, as I am just going to Sleep Talk, another Coil, and I've already burnt 2 sleep turns, so it's definitely in my favor to wake up this third turn. My phone just went off, I'm sorry about that. It's in my favor for my eel to wake up this third turn. This is not rest, it is like normal sleep, so it's not guaranteed to wake up after 2 turns, but it's in my favor too. And if I can fire for a return here, I'm going to do significant damage to this Hydreigon. But unfortunately, I get the 3-turn rest, which is pretty unfortunate. Obviously, it's sleep, so like you never know. But I'd already been asleep for 3 turns. It's not like sleep. It's not like rest when you're guaranteed a 2-turn sleep. With actual like Sleep Powder, you can wake up on turn 2. But that was actually turn 3, and I didn't even wake up. So that was very unfortunate. I would have got huge damage off on this Hydra, and the fact that he Dragon Tailed me out into this Arrow meant that I would have been able to take him out the next turn with, or this turn with a Stone Edge, or this Hydra would have been forced out, and the next time it came in, it would have been extremely low after taking rocks there, so it would have probably been around 20%, or maybe even less the next time it came in. So definitely unfortunate, but you know, that's just part of the game. So I'm now going to miss Edge with my Arrow here, as pretty unfortunate. He Dragon Tails me out as I miss Edge. Edge would have done at least around 50% there, as I get Dragon Tailed out back into my Electros, as he's going to taunt me this turn, and I am just going to wake up. So I wake up on the 4th turn, which is kind of unfortunate, as Taunt will stop me from resting up with my Eel. This Hydra would have been very low if it had taken either the return or the Stone Edge there, but this is now going to force me to go into my Shaman here, as he does Dragon Tail, and I'm just going to get sent out back to my Hydra here. So I'm going to go for the Roost this turn, as he does go for a Roost of his own. So he goes for Roost, scouting how much my Stone Edge would do. and I get him there with a roost. I roost up. If anything, he could have just gone for the Dragon Tail there, knowing he could take at least one Stone Edge, because he's at 80% or so. So me going for roost was my best play overall, as now he will just be able to roost up on my next Stone Edge. That Stone Edge does 57, so that does a ton. That does a chunk to this Hydra. So he can obviously stall me out if I, because I don't have taunt on this set. He can basically like PP stall me with Stone Edge. So I'm just going to make the switch out into my Celesteela here as he goes for Dragon Tail this turn. It's pretty risk free. Me going out into my Celi there meant that I took the least amount of damage from Dragon Tail possible, and I can always protect to get it back with lefties later in the game. And I gave myself the best chance of bringing something like the Shaman in, which is one of the only things that can threaten out this Hydreigon. So obviously the return damage would have been pretty nice earlier with Electros, as that would have really put pressure on this thing, which is a pretty big threat to my team. But I'm kind of forced to Toxic him with my Celesteela, because this thing is, it's just not getting whittled at this stage, as his Dark Pulse does a ton to my Celi, as he's now going to Dark Pulse once more. Not going for the taunt that turn, because me going for Heavy Slam would have whittled him down a significant amount. Would have done like around 40 or 50. And I would have been recovering health with the lefties throughout the turns. I could have started stalling out his roosts with Heavy Slam, but he was kind of in a better position to just take me out with a few Dark Pulses there, as that does allow me to get a Toxic off. And now this thing is on a timer, which is very nice to the rest of my team. So I'm going to Protect up. He's going to make the nice play of roosting up, so stunting on the Protect, I can respect that. Definitely his best play, because he knows I'd want to preserve health on this thing for Mamo. So I'm going to now switch out into my Shaman, as he does go for Dark Pulse this turn. It does a ton to me, revealing that he's actually a Dread Plate set, so this is important to know. I'm just going to go for the Synthesis up this turn with my Shaman. I want to keep it healthy for the Finny, as well as put it out of range of Ice Shard from Life Orb Mamo. So I'm going to switch out this turn, go into my Nidoqueen here, as he does go for the Volt here. I felt like him going for Overheat that turn was too obvious, and had I gone out into my my bulky Electros or my Mew there, I would have been able to take an Overheat from a Scarfed Rodent and gain some momentum back. But him going for Volt there was a pretty, like, it was a very offensive play, but it also made sense. I can get behind why he made that play. But this turn I am going to make the double out into my Mew, expecting his Venu to come in, as this does award me a potential Wisp. But I am just going to choose the Roost this turn, wanting to scout for, wanting to get health back in case he just went out into his Rotom there on my Roost, or even his Hydra on my Wisp or Psychic. And considering his Hydra is Toxic, it would have been a wasted turn, but this allows me to get some more health back on my Mew. So he's going to go for Sleep Powder and miss. So that's some nice justice for like the long sleep turn or the Stone Edge miss earlier in the game, as this turn I will just be able to taunt his Venu. And yeah, a taunted Venu can't really do a ton to the rest of my team. It's essentially walled by my Celesteela here, so it's also walled by my Spidef Nidoqueen once it's taunted. And if I did have Psychic there, I could have just fired for Psychic. So him going Hydra here made a lot of sense. I'm just going to Super Fang down this Hydra. I was actually faster than this Hydra, I believe, so I could have taunted him here and made a real man play. But had he been faster than me and got a Roost up, he could potentially like flinch me down with Dark Pulse, really weaken my Mew. And I need to play cautiously with this Mew. This Mew's really important for late game. So he's gonna just go for the Roost here as I bring in my my Arrow this turn. And now I'm gonna fire for Stone Edge. I'm actually gonna crit. This this Hydra, so definitely unfortunate. If he went for Dark Pulse that turn, he would have died to the Toxic damage after taking an Edge, but he would have got damage off on my Hydra. If he went for Dragon Tail, he would have phased me out and also died to the Toxic Recall. If he'd gone for Roost there, he would have obviously lived the Toxic Recall, because he would have roosted up after taking the Edge, but he would have been very low, and I think in range of the next, he would have definitely been in range of the next Stone Edge, because Stone Edge is doing like 57 we saw earlier versus the Hydra, and with Roost he's only recovering 50, and in conjunction with Toxic damage, that's going to put him in range, considering that Stone Edge did 62 with a crit. Like 62 is what he was at. So yeah, this definitely unfortunate, because he would have got damage off on my Arrow, but you're gonna see that's definitely gonna come back. So I'll say that. He's gonna go into his Finny here, as Shaman is gonna be my switch into this monster, as he's gonna set up a Calm Mind. So this is kind of spooky, definitely kind of spooky. I do have Shaman, which can 2 KO it with Seed Flare, which is pretty nice, as I get a nice 52% off with the Seed Flare, and I get a Speed F drop. He's gonna fire off Moonblast and get a special attack drop, so we're getting drops left, right, and center here, but that's gonna be okay. I'm gonna Synthesis up this turn, in case he did want to go for a Calm Mind there, or even switch out and just go out into Rotom to preserve this Finny for later on. I could have got a free heal up there, but he's just gonna fire off a Moonblast. He's pretty adamant about weakening my Shaman, so I'm just gonna take him out here with the Seed Flare, and down goes Finny. So that's a decent threat to my team out of the way, and that means that Misty Terrain is gonna be Misty Terrain is not gonna be around for too much longer. So my Mew probably will be able to Wisp this Mamoswine if I ever get in a 1v1 situation with it, and I can afford to risk the Will-O-Wisp. But either way, that thing is out of the picture, and I do have a decent sack in Shaman if I do need it late game versus the Mamo. So I'm gonna go into my Nidoqueen here, as he does just fire off an Overheat, and with Black Sludge up, I am out of range of a Spike, and that was one of the reasons why I went into this Queen, because I need to keep Queen around. Scarf T-Bolt is looking pretty annoying late game if I let my Electros get weakened, so I need to keep this thing around if possible. And this turn I am just going to make the switch out into my Mew, as he just fires off an Overheat here. And this is pretty nice, because Mew's in, I can just Roost up, and he's going to bring out his Venu here. Now, I say I can Roost up, but going for Will-O-Wisp was pretty free, because had I roosted and he brought in Venu, I would have to go for Taunt the next turn and then go for Wisp. But if I Wisp him this turn, as he switches in, I can Taunt him, then Roost up, keeping him very low for the rest of my team. But unfortunately I missed Wisp there. It is what it is. I'm just going to Taunt him here as he goes for Sludge Bomb. So he's now fishing for Sludge Bomb poisons, which is sort of what he has to do, because Mew's a pretty big threat to his team, and I just want to get this Venu burnt. I want to get him chipped down, and I want to keep Mew healthy for the Mamo if I can for the late game. So he's going to poison me here with the Sludge Bomb, which is unfortunate, but it's bound to happen if you're spamming it like that, so it's no big deal. I'm just going to keep roosting up with Mew. He's eventually going to start spamming Sludge Bomb here, because he doesn't want to lose a turn to clicking a status move on my Taunt. But I'm just going to start roosting up here. And eventually he is going to fire off a Leech Seed, which is going to obviously cripple Mew with a Leech, but it's going to leave me at a higher amount of health than if he had clicked Sludge Bomb that turn. He's going to go for Leech there. He misses, so some justice for the Willow miss earlier. And this turn, I think I do just switch out with Mew. I'm going to go into my Electros here. Eel is going to be able to rest up on this Venu, but he's going to go for the Sleep Powder there, not allowing me to actually get my health back with the rest, which is a really smart play. He knows I have Sleep Talk, but going for Sleep Talk there obviously prevented me from getting my health back. So he's going to Synthesis up here, and Eel's inside. I'm going to start Sleep Talking, get the Coil up. Still haven't revealed Return here, so he doesn't know what sort of coverage move I have for him at the moment, but he's going to start Sludge Bombing me down. It's not a 2-hit KO, so we're chewing that. At 26, so it's a 5-hit KO, factoring in lefties, which is pretty cool. I get a return off there. It did 32, so this is what I was saying earlier, like that was a +1 return, it did 32 to a Mega Venusaur, so imagine how much a +2 return would have done to a Hydreigon. It would have done a ton, but his Venu is now going to fire for a Leech Seed here, as I do go for the rest, and just rest up my my Eel here, as he's getting a lot of recovery back with the Leech, as well as Synthesis here, when he does choose to go for it, but I get kind of unlucky here with my Sleep Turns. I get another Coil, which isn't the end of the world, but factoring in the Leech, his Sludge Bombs are doing quite a lot of damage. He gets a crit here, which kind of sucks, because now my Eel's gonna be in range of a T-Bolt from Rotom. If he hadn't got a crit there with his Sludge Bomb, I could have preserved Eel. I could have switched out this turn on his Synthesis and just sacked something else off to bring in something like Aero, or even my Celesteela to just start clicking Heavy Slam, and preserved my Eel at about like 30% or so, out of range of another T-Bolt from Rotom. and then I would have been able to just burn another turn and wake up and click rest, but you know, crits happen. I crit his Hydra earlier with Stone Edge, so it's just, you know, it's part of the game, as he will just be able to knock me out here with the Sludge Bomb. But even like a Scarf late game Rotom isn't too big of a concern, because I do still have Nidoqueen around, which is why I preserved it and why I was willing to sack off Electros there. So I'm going to go into my era here. It's the only real thing that can, like reliably take out Venu here and have a good lead matchup versus anything, and have a good matchup versus anything he wants to bring in. If I went into Shaman here and clicked Psychic, that afforded him a switch into Rotom to just to take out my Shaman with an overheat. In hindsight, like going Shaman there wouldn't have been that bad a play, but me going Arrow here allows me to preserve differential. It also allows me to just take a T-Bolt from Rotom, because I am so bulky on this Arrow. Naturally, I can live from full a Scarf T-Bolt if he's timid, which he has to be to outspeed, you know, like a Jolly Arrow. I also live an Ice Shard from Mamo from full 2 with ease, so I can just take him out with an Aqua Tail. But in true Gypsy fashion, I am going to miss an Aqua Tail here, which is super unfortunate, as he does get the Sleep Powder off, and this is absolutely game changing. So his Venu is going to go down here. What would have been more than likely a 4 or 5-0 win is now out of reach, as his Venu is going to put me to sleep, and this is going to force me to sack off. My Queen here. Could have sacked off my Rotom. Definitely could have sacked off my Rotom, my Shaman there, and gone into Mew. But I still would have been playing around with a missing Wisp, as I'm gonna sack off my Queen here to this Mamo's Icicle Crash, and gonna go out into my Mew this turn and just start roosting up, because I need to roost stall this, basically pressure this Mamo down with its Life Orb recovery, Life Orb recall I should say, and force it to kind of go down to Life Orb. I could have gone for a Will-O-Wisp, like I mentioned these turns, but the fact that I just missed Aqua Tail was really kind of making me lean away from potentially risking an even less accurate move in Will-O-Wisp versus this Mamoswine. Aqua Tail had a 90% chance to hit, so yeah, I wasn't really trying to risk missing a Willow here. Me going for Roost is like one of my safest ways of taking down this Mamo, forcing it to take all that recoil, but he does get me to a range of health where Ice Shard was able to take me out. In hindsight, like watching this back, I really could have just sacked off Shaman. I probably preserved Nidoqueen, sacked off Shaman, and just risked the Willow versus this Mamoswine here. But that's not what I opted to do during the game, and I felt that if I can get it low enough, I can just take it out with Heavy Slam from my Selly after I recover enough health. And I'd have Nidoqueen in the back to take a T-Bolt to chew a T-Bolt from Rotom, which he'd have to lock himself into to take out Arrow. So I did sort of misplay this endgame a bit. I probably still could have won this endgame, but definitely the Aqua Tail miss with Arrow definitely sealed this game in my opinion. It really kind of set me on this back foot, which you know, definitely took away what should have been, I'd say, at least a 4-0 win into a loss here. So he's going to flinch me down with his Icicle Crash. It didn't really matter at that stage, because Scarf T-Bolt was going to be able to take me out regardless with my Selly from that range of health, obviously. And because I haven't burnt a turn of sleep here, he will be able to take me out in 2 turns with a T-Bolt, and that is going to be a pretty definitely a haxy game. Definitely an unfortunate loss for week 5 versus Aki. I know he felt terrible about this. He felt really bad about obviously me missing Aqua Tail, but it's obviously out of his control. It's not his fault at all, and he got, you know, there were crits left, right, and center. He missed Sleep Powders. He got crit with his Hydra. You know, I missed attacks. I missed Stone Edge. I got like a 3 max turn sleep with Electros, and you know, I was crit too. So shit happens. It's just unfortunate. It's out of anyone's control, but it was definitely an exciting game. So definitely a fun, exciting week 5. And obviously not so fun when you're on the receiving end of hacks, but it was definitely a show for the ITL. So that was definitely an interesting week. Hopefully, if we do face Aki again in the season, it's going to be a clean game and a more exciting game. But that's going to be week 5. Going to jump into the last one for today's upload, which should be week 6. So going to jump into that in just a sec. Alright guys, so we're back here with the last match for today. We got week 6 up against a good friend of mine, Sebi VGC, otherwise known as OP Dragonite on Showdown, and his spooky team of threats. He's got the nice Volcarona Hooper core, definitely a nightmare prep for this too. If you don't have something like Muck on your team, and even with Muck, you know, they're a big threat. So he's got Sand, he loves his Hippo Exca Sand core. Kyurem is a pretty big threat to my team as well. Ice does not have good switch-ins on my team. Heliolisk, as I mentioned, electrics are pretty threatening to my squad, especially fast electrics. So yeah, he's definitely got a fast offensive team with both Volcarona and Hooper being his Z eligible mons. So yeah, big threats. Z Hooper allows it to break past Muck more efficiently. Like Z Focus Punch will just destroy Muck if I don't have enough defensive bulk, so that's important. Gonna quickly go over the team. We have a I think Aquatail Stone Edge Aero. This thing literally with Aquatail and Stone Edge just destroys his team. I think I had Taunt on this sort of Hone Claws. Either way, one of the ways to break past Hippodon. And then we have a Spidef Nidoqueen, again here to check his Heliolisk, as well as being a soft check to this Volcarona. Then we have Specs Gren, which just goes ham versus his team. Dark Pulse hits everything, literally everything neutrally. Surf can really clean up late game. Water Shuriken is nice to have that in the back for a boosted Volcarona if it's low. And yeah, U-turn is nice to be able to take out the Hooper after rocks. So then we have a mixed defensive Celesteela, a really nice check to Excadrill, as well as a secondary response to this Kyurem, which is a pretty big threat. I can take a T-Bolt from Heliolisk if I need to, and I can fire off Heavy Slams versus the Hooper. Spreading Leech again is free. Nothing on his team really wants to take a Leech. Everything is going to get whittled down by that. Then we have a mixed defensive, like pretty specially defensive Mew. The only real physical attackers on his team are like Physical Hooper, Exca, which is walled by this Selly, and his Hippodon, which doesn't really count. Either way, I'm a Calm Mind, Surf, Psychic, I think, Mew, which just is pretty nice versus his team, honestly. Surf being able to hit Volk, Exca, and Hippo. Psychic being able to hit the other few mons on his team, and I have a Muck to trap and take on his Hooper, as well as his Volcarona. This is an Assault Vest with some defense investment to live a Z Focus Punch from full, from his Hooper, or I think after rocks, something like that. Pretty bulky Muck, I think, with the Rock Slide on this set. So my Arrow as well is really bulky. It can live like a +2 hidden Paraelectric or something from his Volcarona, so that's pretty important to note, to having a nice secondary response to Volk. So Muck is capable of being a Hooper check and not having to worry about checking Volcarona on top of that. So gonna jump into the game here. He is gonna lead off with his Kyurem, as I lead off with my Gren. Now, wanting to scout here for Scarfed Kyurem, which is a very potential bring in this game, as it does check Aero, as well as like Scarfed Nidoqueen and just standard Gren. Scarfed Kyurem is definitely a likely possibility here, so I'm going to switch out into my Mew, as he's going to fire off a Draco. So he's more than likely a bulky Kyurem who could obviously take anything from Gren. That's a modest Draco, I'm pretty sure that's a modest Draco, or like timid like Draco Plate, something like that. It's a really offensive Kyurem, considering I am quite a bulky Mew. He's going to fire for Toxic here, and he's going to Toxic his own Kyurem as a result, which is something I'm definitely okay with, because this is going to he's going to chip it down, putting it in range of Specs Dark Pulse from Gren, so I'm okay with that exchange. My Mew's going to be pressured, but I do have Calm Mind on this set, so I can like 1v1 this Kyurem, especially considering the fact that we're both poisoned now. So he's now going to go for an Ice Beam, or he's actually going to switch out this turn as I go into my Selly here. Now I go out to my Selly in case he wanted to just start clicking Ice Beam. I could just click Leech that turn, the turn after, and start getting all my health back. He'd be forced to roost because he'd been losing health to Leech and Toxic. And on the off chance that he did switch out there, Selly matched up pretty nicely versus stuff like Hippo, Exca there. So he's going to go out into his Hooper here, which is a big threat to my team. I can't lose Selly. Selly's important. I don't want to risk him being like like Thunderbolt or something like Gigavolt Havoc and taking out my Selly there, or severely weakening it, because I do need it around for Drill in the Sand. So I'm going to go into my Muck here. He's going to reveal a Nasty Plot, and this is going to be a +2 Z fighting, Muck's gonna take it. He takes 83, so we chew that up. We fire off a powerful poison jab, and we do get the 50%. I think it's like 50% chance to poison with poison touch plus the poison chance from poison jab. So that's pretty nice. We get the poison off on this Hooper, but it really doesn't matter because Gren revenges it anyway. So regardless of what range of health it's at, with or without the poison there, but. Yeah, Gren's going to come in here and just click U-turn, take out the Hooper, and U-turn was my best play in case he went into Cure him there. That would have given me a switch out into my Aerodactyl there to click Stone Edge or Aquatail. So he's going to sack off his Hooper there, which was a fair play. It's taken out my Muck, which was potentially my response to his Volcarona, so it's potentially paved the way for his Volk to put in some work this game. So I'm going to go into my Mew here. Mew is actually, this is a timid set. I think it's like timid max speed, so I do speed tie with this Volk in the instance that I'm like already calm-minded up, but I have a pretty safe switch in Aerodactyl, so I'm not going to risk staying in and taking a Bug Buzz. He could have also been Specs. That was something I was considering as a possibility, because Quiver Dance Volk is kind of stopped by stuff like Aero. It's kind of checked by Muck as well, like he needs the setup in order to actually pressure Muck. He needs to be pretty strong to actually dent my team. So I felt like it was possible he might bring like Specs with U-turn, as that would give him momentum grabbing capabilities plus potential braking capabilities if he could whittle down my team enough. He could just start punching holes with Specs Volk, but that Bug Buzz is going to do not too much. It's going to allow me to click Aquatail in this turn in case he makes the switch out to Hippowdon. But my man Sebi makes he makes the sick play going into Heliolisk here on the predicted Aquatail. So very nice play. Had I clicked Stone Edge there, this thing would have straight up dropped, but me roosting or me going for Aquatail there was my likelier play, as it did hit Volk, it did hit Hippowdon, so he makes a really nice play here. That was a really cool play for sure. But I'm going to go into my Nidoqueen this turn as he does fire for Surf. So he goes for Surf here, but because I am Spadef, we do chew. This is more than likely a Scarfed Heliolisk. As I mentioned in the team preview, Scarfed Electrics do quite well versus my team, although they do lose momentum versus a Spadef Nidoqueen. So Surf's going to do a ton, but he doesn't want to risk this thing getting taken out by an EQ or an Earth Power. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to set up my rocks as they do pressure his team quite nicely. He's going to bring in his Kyurem here, and I'm just going to switch out into my Selly, knowing that I can take the Ice Beam reasonably well. Still does a lot. Selly isn't really an Ice Beam response, but the fact that I have Leech is pretty nice. It means I can get some recovery back. And on this drill, it's going to be important to chip it down. He's going to... This is an interesting spot with his drill. Because he's potentially a Scarf drill, but the fact that he's got Sand implies that he's more than likely an offensive drill, and I know Sebi loves that set, and he does tend to run SD on his offensive drills, and SD is his only way of significantly denting Selly in Sand. So if he SDs on my switch to Selly, he can like flinch me down with the Rock Slide. If he's Life Orb, he can do a decent chunk, like potentially 2 me if I'm Spadef. So this turn, he's either going to spin or he's going to SD on my Protect, which is a decent play. Like protecting here with Selly awards me a Scout versus his set, and it also stops him spinning, and it also gets health back on my Selly and chips his Excadon in further with the leech I'd be getting back. So this turn I'm actually going to make the aggressive switch out into my Gren, predicting him to go for the SD. At worst he goes for spin here, and I get a kill with Specs Dark Pulse, because he probably didn't want to preserve Exca in this situation, as he is going to go for the Swords Dance, and now I can just fire off a Dark Pulse here and really whittle down this Heliolisk, putting it actually in range of rocks. So that's really nice. This means that now, next time, when Heliolisk switches out, if I prevent his drill from spinning, everything is going to be taking a lot from Spec Surf plus rocks. So that's really solid. I can now go into my Nidoqueen on his Volt switch here. He vaulted there in case I didn't think he was actually Scarfed, and I had stayed in and gone for a second Dark Pulse. He would have been able to probably take out my Gren from potentially take out my Gren. I think my Gren was at full though. I don't know if I don't think Gren died from a Volt there, but he got momentum anyway. He got a ton of damage off of my Gren, and that would have pretty much put me out of switching into any Ice Beams from Kyurem or anything like that. So he goes for Volt there, and I'm just going to go out into my Nidoqueen here and just fire off an Earthquake. as because I'm defensive, it's not going to do a ton. It does 28 though, which is nice chip in conjunction with the poison damage off in this Kyurem, and now I will just be able to go back out into my Mew this turn, as he's going to roost up, and he's going to be taking that Toxic, so he's going to be left in range. He's going to be left pretty low if he chooses to switch out this turn. He's going to take Rocks the next time he comes in. He's probably going to be about 30 or so, but he does choose to roost up once more, which was a good play, as I do reveal the Calm Mind. So this is now kind of panic mode for Sebi, because there's not a ton he can do considering this Mew's boosted, and if I do have Surf, which he doesn't know yet, I can just Oko the Drill, Oko the Volk, and really dent this Hippo, even if it is Spit F. So he is going to switch out into his Exca here, as I do just Calm Mind up one more time in case he wanted to stay in and go for an Ice Beam, as I would be able to take him out the following turn with a Psychic. But his Drill's just going to drop to a Surf, and this is really nice because now his Kyurem's going to come back in, and I think this turn I do just click Psych Shock. I have Psych Shock over Psychic, which doesn't kill his Kyurem, but it does put it in at a range of health where it will be obviously in range of Rocks. He gets a Draco crit here, which obviously mattered because I was boosted, and we saw like a neutral Draco did 50 against me. I was at +2, but honestly it's not the end of the world. This will just allow me to bring in Gren and wrap this game up. So had Mew lived there, basically I would have just been able to click Surf 2 times versus the Volk, and the Hippo, the only real thing that crit did was effect differential, so it's not like it really matters in the outcome of the game or anything here. So I'll just be able to click Surf a few times and win. Like I mentioned, Heliolisk is in range of Rocks, so it's no longer a switch into Gren's Surf, and Gren will just be able to wrap this game up here. So that's going to be week 6. Definitely a fun game versus Sebi. I think like although he has a very offensive team, I definitely think I had the matchup advantage in this game, having Gren, which just destroys his team. Like his water switch in on his team was Jellicent, which just drops to Dark Pulses from Gren. So he didn't have the best matchup here. I had Selly, which checked his Sand Core, and I had Muck for his Hooper, and I had Aero for his Volk. So he didn't have the greatest matchup here, and I had Nidoqueen for his Heliolisk. So this isn't really reflective of Sebi's ability as a player or a builder. I think he just had a pretty rough matchup, and that's just, that's unfortunate. Sometimes you just have shit matchups. But yeah, that's going to be weeks 3 through 6 for the ITL. I hope you guys did enjoy. I know it's going to be quite a long video all up, so for those of you guys who stayed till the end, or for those of you guys who just came back and watched each game, one afternoon at a time or whatever, I do appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys watching my vids. And let me know in the comments if you did enjoy. Drop a like if you did, and I'll be back soon with some more ITL content. I'll probably upload another ITL bundle in a few days' time, or next week or something, whenever I get the time. But yeah, that's going to be it. Hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll catch you next time.